welcome again to our three-part series, our third and final part of Greek Jewry throughout the ages with our dear friend Marcia, Haddad, Ikonomopoulos. My name is Ethan Marcus. I am the Director of Communications for the Sephardic Jewish Brotherhood of America. Such a pleasure to have you all again here for this wonderful three-part series, Greek Jewry throughout the ages, from Antiquity to Modernity. This is a brand new partnership program through what's called the Sephardic Digital Academy. It's a brand new digital initiative sharing all different Torah scholars, Sephardic scholars, Romaniote scholars, obviously, as well, community professionals, educators, and many more throughout the United States and around the world to educate kind of our communities on all local customs and practices coming from Greece, Turkey, and the former Ottoman Empire. We're so glad to have you tonight here with our dear friend Marcia. Now, Marcia, in addition to being not only a close friend of mine and a mentor, is the museum director of Kehila, Kedosha, Janina Synagogue and Museum, the only Greek Jewish synagogue in the Western Hemisphere, as well as the president of the Association of Friends of Greek Jewry. She also sits on the board of trustees of the Synagogue and Museum and the board of directors of the Lower East Side Preservation Initiative. She was born into a traditional Sephardic Jewish family from Salonika and has devoted her life to telling the story of Greek Jewry as an author, translator, editor, and lecturer. She holds 2 BAs, one from Brooklyn College in psychology, and the second from Queens College in Byzantine and Modern Greek Studies, plus 2 masters, the first in psychiatric casework from the New School, and the second in Italian from Queens College. Now, it's really my honor and privilege to introduce once again Marcia to begin her lecture. Marcia, whenever you are ready.
Okay. Oh, can you hear me now? Ethan, am I unmuted?
No, you're good.
I'm good, okay. I'd like to welcome everybody who has come this evening for the third part in our 3-part series. I want to give a special thanks to the Sephardic Brotherhood of America, to Kehila Kedosha, to Ethan Marcus, who makes me look a lot more tech savvy than I actually am. And I really have been enjoying these things much more than I should be. It's a lot of work, but it's so enjoyable. And I see many old friends and hopefully many new friends. This particular part of the series is long. We're going through the 18th, 19th, 20th, and the 21st century. Before we start, I want to set the ground rules. We're going to be giving a little background on Romaniote roots and Sephardic roots. And a mistake is often made in the Ashkenazi world, thinking that everything is the same. Of course, we were all Jews. We follow the same scriptures, but our Judaism developed differently in the Romaniote and the Sephardic world, leading to different customs, traditions, and mindsets. It's always important to remember that while our history has been punctuated by certain tragedies, life went on. We celebrated our holidays, we raised our children, and we practiced our religion. With that being said, I'm just going to briefly go over the origins of the Romaniotes, which came about with the return from the Babylonian captivity in 536 before the Common Era. And Jews, not all Jews, returned to Judea. Many settled along the shores of the Mediterranean and established communities. We saw this in the first 2 lectures. Now, the Sephardim, we didn't really discuss that much in the first 2 lectures. I'm going to go into it more in this lecture. The expulsion of the Sephardim took place in 1492. The Alhambra decree was March 31st, 1492. But the actual expulsion did not take place until August 10th of 1492. The good King Ferdinand gave the Jews a couple of extra days so they wouldn't have to leave on the 9th of Av. You know, it's interesting. I have my second master's in Italian, and I studied Italian literature during the 15th and 16th century. There was no mention made whatsoever of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. And this was an event that would have shaken up the world. I mean, you had anywhere from 200,000 to 400,000 Jews that were transplanted and sent out into European countries. Now, while Machiavelli, he loved Ferdinand, by the way. He thought he was a great example of a great ruler, but no mention was made whatsoever of the expulsion of the Jews. Where did these Sephardic Jews go? They went primarily to the Ottoman Turkish Empire, but they also went along the coast of North Africa, and they went into France, and from there into other countries in Europe. They went wherever there was trade and wherever they can find a means to make a living. Of course, we know the story of the Sephardim being invited into the Ottoman Turkish Empire by Sultan Bayezid II, who, by the way, had a Roman Yod rabbi whisper in his ear, take advantage of the foolishness of Ferdinand and enrich your kingdom in the process. There were long-reaching consequences and repercussions from the expulsion of the Sephardic Jews. For a period of time, Jews would gather together, the Kabbalists, and try to find a date when the Messiah was coming, because how could something so disastrous as the expulsion of the Jews from Spain occur without God preparing something special for us? Well, that something special was not Shabtai Tzvi, that's for sure. Shabtai Tzvi was a self-proclaimed Messiah. Actually, he had a Nathan of Gaza who acted to herald in his coming. And he was born in what is now Izmir, in Turkey. He claims to have been born on the 9th of Av, which according to some traditions was going to be the date that the Messiah would arrive. He lived from 1626 to 1676. He gathered quite a following. You know, there are two important things if you're going to become a Messiah. You have to have someone to herald your coming, and you have to be charismatic. Well, Shabtai Tzvi had both, and he gathered quite an audience about him. He especially appealed to Jews in Salonika, Jews who had been part of the hidden Jews in Spain and felt more comfortable expressing their Judaism by practicing another religion and practicing their Judaism in private. Well, it came to the ears of the Sultan that the rabbis were very upset, and the Sultan called Shabtai Tzvi to his palace in Constantinople and gave him a choice. He could either renounce what he said and convert to the Muslim faith, or if he's the Messiah, he certainly wouldn't mind if they shot arrows at him. He certainly would survive that. Well, Shabtai Tzvi was not going to be a martyr. He chose to convert to the Muslim faith, and hundreds of Jews followed in his path. It created a movement that had its repercussions way into the 19th and sometimes the 20th century. We're going to go into the 19th century now, which, by the way, was a very busy century. We have the death of Ali Pasha, the Greek War of Independence, and the initial formation of modern Greece and its influence on Jews in Greece. Excuse me one second. You know, looking at this here, I find one thing that many Americans have problems with is understanding European history. Greece didn't just, modern Greece that is, didn't just evolve on one day. We have July 4th, they have March 25th, but this was going on for years afterwards, decades afterwards. And where we celebrate the Greek War of Independence in 1821, there were still parts of Greece that were becoming parts of modern Greece into the 20th century. Ali Pasha was an instrumental figure in Janina. He was actually from what is probably Albania. He was a equal opportunity murderer. He murdered Muslims, Christians, and Jews. But you know, sometimes with people who are despots, if they're in power long enough, they bring about positive actions. During his long reign, Janina became a center of literature. He also brought about many innovative things into Janina, quite unexpected. but he drew the attention of the wrong people. Where many people applauded him, many wished his death. And he was actually killed by other Ottoman Turks. And this here is a picture of his tomb. I'm sorry about that. A picture of his tomb. And you can still see this when you go to Janina, up where the castle is. The Greek War of Independence started started way before 1821. Greeks under the Ottoman Turks did not fare well. According to the Ottoman Turks, all non-Muslims belonged to a millet. And whoever was the leader of that millet, whether it be the patriarch for the Greeks and the Armenians, or Haham Bashi, a head rabbi for the Jews, was responsible for collecting the taxes. All the Turks really wanted, everybody pay their taxes and stay put. If anything, Jews were the more desirable minority, because they weren't looking, at least at that point, to establish a country of their own. And the Greeks wanted back the land that they felt was rightfully theirs. After the fall of Constantinople, when the Ottoman Turks took over, a good portion of that land the Greeks felt belonged to them, especially the city of Constantinople. Well, you can see here, at the beginning, all that was really allocated to Greece during the Greek War of Independence at the beginning was this area here on the mainland. It wasn't until later that Thessaly came in, and it wasn't until the 20th century that Macedonia came in. And as late as 1919, you had parts of Thrace. As late as 1947, you had the islands in the Dodecanese. This happens to be a Declaration of Freedom Fighters that's engraved in Patras in 1821. And Patras has the distinction of one of the first cities to become part of modern Greece. Now, the date March 25th, which is the date that is celebrated at Greek Independence Day, is also a religious holiday. It's the day of the Annunciation. Whether this is a coincidence or whether it was chosen is always up for dispute. The Jews lived in Patras, and we went through this in the previous two classes. They were there since Antiquity. There were actually 4 synagogues in the 16th century, and 3 were Sephardic, 1 was Roman Yod. The only synagogue that lasted was the Roman Yod synagogue, and if you want to see it now, it's in the interior of the Jewish Museum in Athens, saved by Nikos Stavroulakis. Now, repercussions for Jews. With the hanging of the patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church in Istanbul by the Muslim Turks, his body was thrown to the Jews. Jews very often were given degrading occupations, things that nobody else wanted, being executioners, and in this instance, the body of the patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church was thrown to the Jews. By the time word got back to the mainland of Greece, Jews were being blamed for the execution of the patriarch, and persecutions would ensue. In fact, the Jewish population in the Peloponnese would all but disappear. Most of them went up north into Volos and Larissa and Chalkis. Now, somehow okay. Can you see the writing over here? Because I can't see it. Some of it is, just shake your head if you can. I guess this is covering it over here, but as long as you can see it, that's all that's important. The great powers did not feel that Greece would be able to govern itself. So they took it upon themselves to appoint a minor king from Bavaria, because none of them, neither France nor Germany or England, was allowed to provide the king. The first king in modern Greece was King Otto from Bavaria, a young man who knew nothing about Greece at all. And the first capital chosen in Greece was in Nafplion, And this is where Theodore Kolokotronis, a great revolutionary leader, in 1821 came and proclaimed the freedom, the liberation of Greece from the Ottoman Turks. So it was chosen as the first capital. Why not Athens? Athens was a backwater town and didn't become the capital of modern Greece until 1832, and it was only for nostalgic reasons. There was hardly any Jewish population there, by the way, at that time, and it was a very rural type of town. It was only later with the influx of immigrants from all over that Athens would achieve the prominence that it has now. The next part of Greece to become modern Greece were the Ionian Islands, and Corfu became part of modern Greece in 1864. Now, Corfu is a fascinating instance because at the time it was a mixture of Jews from Apulia in Italy and Greek Jews, and then some Sephardim that had come in. This is the oldest synagogue, the only one that was left after the bombings in the war. And it's called La Scuola Greca, it's the Greek synagogue. It's a Roman Youth synagogue. Next in the Ionian Islands, you have this is the Jewish presence in Corfu, which dated back to Antiquity. And Zakynthos becomes part of modern Greece on May 21st, 1864. Zakynthos, as you know, is a very interesting story. It has the distinction of having saved all of its 275 Jews because of the work of the Metropolitan Bishop Christosomos and Amea Lucas Carrere. This is a picture of the entranceway of the former synagogue there, and this is the Mordos family after the earthquake. There was a major earthquake in Zakynthos, and it's a very beautiful story, not the earthquake itself, but what ensued afterwards. The first ship to arrive with help for the islanders was from Israel, as a way of thanking Zakynthos for what they did to save the Jews of the island. Now in Thessaly, Volos, Larissa, and Trikila became part of modern Greece in 1881. This is the synagogue in Trikila, which has recently been restored. Very small Jewish population there. Larissa, and this is a very interesting picture, and the rabbi in this picture is actually Rabbi Gabriel Azuvi, who's related to a dear friend of mine. And this Larissa became known for its Talmud Torahs and produced many of the rabbis throughout Greece. The synagogue in Larissa is actually set up in a way that you can conduct both Roman Yoke and Sephardic services there, which does take place during its functioning. This is in Volos, and this is the synagogue in Volos. The old synagogue was destroyed by a major earthquake there in the 1950s. Arta. Arta became part of modern Greece in 1878, and this is actually here a gathering of prominent people in Arta to welcome becoming part of modern Greece. This is what the synagogue looked like. There was no synagogue there now. There's no cemetery there now. There's no Jewish community. But when Arta became part of modern Greece, it presented a problem for Janina, because Janina no longer had a means of trading with Jews in other parts of the Ottoman Turkish Empire, since Arta was now part of modern Greece. And this caused the establishment of the Jewish community in Prevasa. We are now in the 20th century. Quite a bit went on. You had the Balkan Wars, 1912 and 1913. You had major emigration from Greece. You had Albania becoming a modern country. And you'll find out while I'm mentioning all these things, World War I from 1914 to 1917, the fire in Salonika in 1917, the exchange of populations, 1922-23, the Campbell riots in Salonika, the Holocaust, and the immigration to Israel. The Balkan Wars. The Balkan Wars, to simplify it, the countries in the Balkans were all claiming the same pieces of land. The Bulgarians everyone went back to when they were at their supreme power. So the Bulgarians wanted the land that had once belonged to them during the Second Bulgarian Kingdom. The Serbs wanted to include in their state all of Albania and Macedonia, which in turn was also claimed by Greece and Bulgaria. Montenegro sought to get the northern area of Albania and the large port cities of the Adriatic. And the Greeks wished to claim Macedonia and Thrace, which Bulgaria also claimed. Thus, the Allies had serious disagreements and claims against each other. During the first, or at the end of the First Balkan War, Thessaloniki becomes part of modern Greece, and this shows the winning Greek army entering into the city of Thessaloniki in 1912. And a lovely picture of the Turks handing over their flag in surrender. It all looked very civilized. I'm sure it was anything but that. And this is on October 17, 1912. The Battle of Vezani was a strategic turning point for the Greek army in the conquest of Janina. And of course, here we have that dramatic photo again of the Turks, painting of the Turks handing over the flag to the king of Greece. The cavalry and the army entered Janina. You know, there was something very interesting that happened, and I used to have
Folks, we seem to be having a small technical issue. Just give us a moment. Sorry, folks, we just got Marcia back on. We had a slight technical problem.
Okay. That was really weird. Now I got to share my, okay. It's not sharing. It's ridiculous.
Marcia, click your PowerPoint button on the bottom of the screen.
I did, okay. No, oh, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, then we're back in, good, okay. Okay, that was very strange, by the way, I don't know what happened. Okay, the cavalry and the army entered Janina. And we celebrate on February 21st, 1913 was Janina becoming part of modern Greece. By the way, in 2013, we at KKJ celebrated the 100th anniversary of Janina becoming part of modern Greece, and I found out we were the only place outside of Janina that it was celebrated. None of the Greek organizations celebrated, not even the Janina Association celebrated it. Crete became part of modern Greece on December 1st, 1913, and that's also a long story in and of itself. Now, Kehila and Drama became part of modern Greece in August of 2016. I love this photo. This is the King of Bulgaria looking down over Kehila, lamenting the loss of Kehila. I'm now going to discuss, this over here, by the way, is from Didymatiko. This is all that's left of the Jewish cemetery there, and Didymatiko became part of modern Greece in 1919. Now I'm going to talk about the emigration of Greek Jews. You know, the word in Greek there's a word for immigration and emigration, but the actual word means the uprooting, tearing up of your roots. And whether it's something you wanted to do or something you were forced to do, it's always a heart-rending situation. Why did Greek Jews leave? We know they came over to the United States during the same time as the massive wave of immigration from 1881 to 1924. The first Greek Jew to arrive was Zakaria Yomtov, who came by way of Albania because the port in Patras had not been dug deep enough for the steamships to come in. The reasons they left: the poor economy in Greece, desire for a better life for themselves and their children, antiquated inheritance laws, the dowry system, political upheavals, forced conscription into the Ottoman Turkish army, and difficulties in practicing the observancy of Judaism. This last difficulty had to do with when Greece became a Christian country, all the shops had to be closed on Sunday. So now Jews, if they wanted to continue to be observant and observe the Shabbat on Saturday, would lose 2 days of work. So it was a decision to make because it would make them difficult to compete with their Christian neighbors. This is the port of Patras at the time that Jews were actually leaving from there to come to the United States. And this is a great picture here of a Greek father lying over the women in his family to protect them from God knows what as they went up to the top of the ship over there. This is what Ellis Island looked like at the time they were coming in. And most of the Greek Jews that came into the United States at that time settled in New York. Many on the Lower East Side, but that was not the only place of settlement. They also went up into Harlem and then later on the Bronx. And then after the building of the Williamsburg Bridge into Williamsburg. This is what the Lower East Side looked like when they came in. And I often wonder what the mindset of these Jews that came from Janina, who came from a beautiful city on a natural lake, were able to grow fresh vegetables in their yards. And here they came into New York, cramped together in squalid quarters, with the stifling hot temperatures during the summer and freezing cold temperatures during the winter. Our founding families, and by the way, many of these families are still very, very active with our synagogue. I want to, at this time, make a disclaimer. I know I'm going to hear from so many of you, why didn't you show my family pictures? We have a photo archive at Kehila Kedosha Janina of over 25,000 family photographs. So I had to select carefully, and if you're not included, my apologies. Hai Jewry, this is with his daughter Lois, and Hai, of course, kept the synagogue together for almost single-handedly for over 60 years. This was from the founders of the CNC garment company, from the Cohn family. And this is the Battino family, the family of Ralph Battino. Here we have the Matzil family, and this little boy over here, Sal Matzil, is on our board of trustees, and his family has always had very close ties. Bekoraki Matzil was a shochet, a moil, and a rabbi. This is the Naphtali family here, and the Naphtali family has a very interesting story with our community because it was because of the tragic loss of a young man, Abraham Naphtali, in an industrial accident while he was working for the Ashkenazi Tobacco Company up in Harlem, that the United Brotherhood of Janina, the Good Hope Society, was formed. Because they didn't have a burial society, the Ashkenazim didn't think they were Jewish, and the uptown Sephardic Jews from Sheriff Israel finally relinquished and gave a spot for poor Abraham in their cemetery, but that's when the Brotherhood was formed. This here is the Avasai Ganish family with his beautiful wife, Louisa, was actually his second wife, and the Ganish family did very well for themselves in the garment district. Most of them went into some aspect of the garment district, most of them low-end, aprons, ladies' underwear, nightgowns, kimonos, or I don't think anyone wears them anymore. Family celebrations. I love this picture, and it seemed that the world did because every Greek newspaper picked it up. This is a bar mitzvah. This is Erwin Joseph's bar mitzvah in 1937. How many bar mitzvahs do you see the Greek flag being displayed? And at the dais, with places of honor, the rabbi, which was Jasula Levi, is sitting right next to the then Archbishop of Americas, Athenagoras. Not all settled on the Lower East Side. Many followed employment in Harlem, following the Ashkenazi Tobacco Company that was founded by two brothers who originally came from Kavala in Greece, learned the fine art of cigarette making in Egypt, and brought it to the United States. The Bronx community, where they did have connections with the downtown synagogue on Broome Street, they had their own synagogues up there. Kingbridge and Hunts Point were two locations where they founded synagogues. It was called the Sheriff Israel of Janina, originally in Harlem and then moving up into the East and the West Bronx. This here is the Cabelli family. And this little girl here, Shirley Paganetti, this is the Mutra picture. You see the expression on her face? That's because her father gave her a good slap when she wanted to sit down and make her mother stand. Shirley celebrated her 93rd birthday this past weekend. This picture became a treasure because this is the picture of the Gani family, and this is the grandmother, the matriarch, who actually was a Colchomero. Her name was Dinah Colchomero. And when we did the family tree of Jasula Colchomero, Jasula and Rachel Colchomero, it was mind-boggling because we said Jasula had to have siblings. I mean, the families were so large in Janina. How could there just be one son? The first sibling we found was Dinah Colchomero Ganis. The Brooklyn community, this is the Colchomero family in Brooklyn. This picture was also a treasure because no one in the family knew who this young man was. It turned out to be Max Bacola, who was one of the few surviving members of his family. When his mother, Danula, married Ezra Bacola, most of the family was deported, but Max, to the concentration camps. But Max went to the country before then and stayed with the Colchomero family in New York before he went on to California. And this here is the engagement of, this is Rose Eskenaz's family, the engagement of her mother, Dora Madish, to her father, Solomon Capone. More with the Brooklyn family. This is Annette Binder from the Politis family. She just celebrated her 93rd birthday. And this is the Astor family from, and I have a feeling I have a good number of the relatives from that family on here. This is in the Brooklyn community. This was in Williamsburg. Getting back to Europe. while all this immigration was going on, coming to the United States, and by the way, they also went elsewhere. There were Jews that went to France at that time. There were Jews that went to Eretz Israel, a large Zionist movement in Greece. But Albania was being formed. There was no Albania until 1913. And it seemed that Montenegro, Greece, and Serbia all wanted parts of Albania. In fact, I have a map here that shows you how they wanted to split it up, and then this is how Albania really took form. This is the Declaration of Independence of Albania in November of 1912. World War I, 1914 to 1917. By the way, there were immigrants from Janina, Greece, and the United States who fought for the United States Army in World War I. One was Shorty Matza, who have a delightful picture of him in Boston with some friends from the Lower East Side who went there to see him off to go fight in the war. And Shorty was short. That's how he got his nickname. This is the ethnic groups in Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Now just take a look at this and then you can understand all the dynamics that was going on. You had German speakers. You had Bosnians, Serbs, Hungarians. Everybody wanted a piece of the pie. And then you had the assassination in Sarajevo of the Archduke, which led to the beginning of the war. Now, Turkey sided with the Central Powers. They justified this alliance by citing Germany's early victories in the war, and being on the winning side would provide the opportunity to forge a swift victory over neighboring enemies and avoid the imminent disintegration of the Ottoman Empire. On the other hand, Greece had a problem. They didn't enter until 1917, and they entered on the side of the Entente, and there were two opposing factions in Greece at that time. One was King Constantine, who came from that same barbarian ruling family that provided all the kings of Greece, and he was a Germophile. He really wanted to side with Germany. And then there was Eleftherios of Venezuela, who was born in Crete, and he was a very controversial figure at the beginning of the 20th century in Greece, but his viewpoints won over and they sided with the right side. They sided with the Entente. And this is a cartoon showing all the different ways that the king was being pulled. Now, Gerald, this was all going on with World War I. You had the Great Fire in Salonika on August 18th, 1917. Now, picture at this time, Salonika was filled with army personnel from many of the Entente armies. The city was very overcrowded. As with most cities at that time, most of the architecture was wooden, houses very close together. The fire was not an anti-Semitic act. The fire started in the old city, the upper city, Antiquity, and it was a simple cooking accident where oil splattered, got on fire, and the wind brought the flames down through the center of the city, and the whole city center was burned. In the center of the city, not only did Jews live, there were also Christians living in the center. And this is to give you an idea of some of the destruction that took place. Half of the Jewish community was displaced. Now, most of the Jews then lived along the port, and many of them worked at the port, including my grandfather, who was a Hamali at the port. In fact, I can thank the fire for my grandfather leaving Salonika, and he turned out to be the only surviving member of his large family due to an act of fate. The beginnings of dreams that ended in ashes. At the end of World War I, Greece felt that Turkey apparently was much weakened, that they could take advantage of the situation and march into Asia Minor, and if anything, get back their Constantinople, which was a precious city for them. They didn't work out. In fact, the Turks resisted, regaining the upper hand, and in August 1922, they retook Smyrna on the 9th of September. What happened afterwards was the burning of Smyrna. This was the second largest city in Turkey at that time, and it was a very cosmopolitan city. There were many Jews that lived there. By the way, Jews were not affected by the burning of Smyrna itself because the Turks burned down the Greek Christian neighborhood and not the Jewish neighborhood. They were affected economically, and good numbers of them decided to leave Turkey afterwards, but they did not suffer the way the Greek Orthodox Christians suffered. With the Treaty of Lausanne, this was an interesting treaty because it had nothing to do with the feelings of the people. All those Greek Christians living in Turkey had to return to mainland Greece, even though many of them couldn't even speak Greek. All those Turks living in Greece had to return to Anatolia, to Turkey, even though many of them had lived there for centuries. It was a complete upheaval. Jews were not included. They were not obliged to go to either direction. There were very few exceptions to this. The patriarchy in Constantinople, in Istanbul, was allowed, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch was allowed to continue to exist. And there were small cities in Thrace with a Turkish population that was allowed to maintain them. And the Turkish library on the island of Rhodes was allowed to continue to be open. You can see the heartache here with the exchange of population. It was an uprooting. And it was an uprooting that also affected the Jews, because many of the Greek Orthodox Christians that came into Greece were of the same caliber as the Jews. They were cosmopolitan, they were merchants. Aristotle Onassis' family was among them. There was economic competition that gave a rise in anti-Semitism. And in some instances, such as in Salonika, they were no longer the majority population. Jews in Salonika went from being over half the population to 1/3. There were positive repercussions from this also because it changed the composition of Greece. Over 1.5 million Greek Orthodox Christians entered into Greece, and at that time Greece had a population of 5 million, so it really inflated the population. There was the need to build up centers for them to live. Athens all of a sudden became a prominent city, and especially the suburbs. You had places like Neo Smyrna, where many of them found home. All over Greece, they were established. I mean, even I have a friend of mine from Florina, that her family originally were Asia Minor refugees. They also brought with them Rebettica music, the music of the blues of Greece, and changed the, I keep getting people coming in here, and changing the music in Greece and the culture. This also led to the Campbell riots, which was a very ugly instance in Salonika in 1931, where it was led by a nationalistic anti-Semitic party known as the National Union of Greece. And they had a pogrom in the neighborhood. Many of the Jews, their businesses were destroyed, and many were left homeless. There was one Jewish resident who was dead. This was the beginning of the end, many people feel. I really feel the fire in 1917 was the beginning of the end, because with the reconstruction of the Jewish community there, they lost their center. They were no longer just living around their synagogues. They had to build their synagogues up. The whole layout of the city was changed. These are some pictures from the riots, and you can see Jews in the streets, no place to go, some taking shelter in a synagogue. World War II. You know, you look at all this and you say to yourself, how did Greece even be able to exist with everything that was going on? It's really a small miracle that they survived all of this. Um, October 28, 1940, is the date that Greece entered World War II, and this was when the ultimatum on the part of Mussolini was given to the Greeks, saying that he was entering through the Albanian border into Greece. And of course, at that time, the then dictator of Greece, Metaxas, answered back with a resounding "Oki, no." On the Albanian front, and I'll show you a picture of that soon, this is where they fought. There was also afterwards, we're going to discuss the German invasion, the Bulgarian zone of occupation, the Italian zone of occupation, deportations, and statistics. This is a picture of Albania as it existed then, and this is where the Albanian front, very, very close to Janina. In fact, when you're going through the mountains here, you can see where the border of Albania is. Now, to give you some idea at that time, the population of Greece was about 7.5 million, 76,000 of which were Jews. The population of Italy was 55 million, and the population of Jews was close to the population of Jews in Greece. On the Albanian front, this was called the Cone Battalion. They came from Salonika, and practically all of them were Jewish. There were many, many Jews that fought on the Albanian front. Out of a total Jewish population of close to 76,000, 13,000 Jewish men fought. Of those 13,000, 3,500 were severely injured, and 561 perished. These are Jewish nurses in the city of Volos tending to the injured. Of course, the major hero amongst Jews of the Albanian front is Mordecai Frazis, who was a Jew from Chalkis. He left behind his wife and young children and perished in December of 1940 on the Albanian front. His body was returned to Greece at a very auspicious time, because at that time his grandson, also named Mordecai Frazis, was the rabbi of Salonika, and he was reinterred in the Jewish cemetery in Salonika. I always like to talk about the unsung heroes. And where Mordecai Frazis was a major hero, there were many unsung heroes. These are the ones from Janina. Joseph Raphael was age 26. He died November 5th, 1940. He sold vegetables with his father Angelos. Moses Shemos was age 24. He died November 26, 1940. He was the sole support of his widowed mother. Shemos Addis died at the age of 31 on November 26, 1940, and he worked with his father in a small textile store. David Negrin, age 28, died February 14, 1941, and he worked with his brothers as a dairyman. Judah Pizzarello, age 25, we don't know his exact date of death, and he worked with his father as a butcher. Lirio Negrin, age 19, has been listed as missing in action since November of 1940. A recent work is being done now with a mass grave in Albania where many of the Greeks were buried. And a deal has been made to do DNA research on the bones to see if they can identify any of those. I'm hoping they can find Lirio Negrin. What was another sad story was a man by the name of Nisim Addis, excuse me, who returned to Janina severely wounded, an amputee, and was rounded up with the deportation of the Jews of Janina and wound up dying immediately at Auschwitz-Birkenau. It's often been very painful why these men who fought for their country, that some arrangement was not made so that they wouldn't have to be deported to their deaths afterwards. The occupation of Greece officially between April 1941 and October of 1944. The Italians were not doing too well. In fact, the Greeks were really giving them quite a beating, so Germany came to the aid of their Italian allies. And here you have the Germans at the Acropolis and the Germans entering the city of Salonika. The Germans divided the country up into 3 zones of occupation. They gave the furthest northeastern part of Greece to their Bulgarian allies. They gave most of the country to their Italian allies, and they kept a chunk of Macedonia in the north for themselves. They kept the most populous city of Jews in Greece, Thessaloniki, the most populous center of Sephardic Jews in the world, for over 400 years. This is a picture taken in July of 1942 with the roundup of Jewish men between the ages of 18 and 35 in Platia Eleftherias, Freedom Square, the irony of that, as they were being signed up for forced labor. The Germans humiliated them in the hot sun, and we have a whole series of photos that the German wives were taking from a balcony. The Bulgarian zone of occupation was the furthest reaches of northeastern Greece, which included parts of Macedonia and Thrace. The Bulgarians have been denying their complicity in the murder of Greek Jews and Jews from southern Yugoslavia for years. They like to pat themselves on the back for quote unquote saving their Jews and seem to conveniently forget the role they had in the murder of Jews of Greece and southern Bulgaria. But we have the photos to prove it. The Italian zone of occupation included Athens, and the starvation in Athens was very severe in the winter of 1940 into 1941. The Italian zone of occupation also included Janina and most of mainland Greece until the capitulation of Mussolini in September of 1943. Here you have the deportations from Salonika from March through July of 1943. This is the Hasid couple. The Jews in Salonika had to wear the star. These are the very famous photo of these men showing their tattooed numbers on their arm. The deportations from Bulgaria's zone of occupation in Greece took place in March, the beginning of March of 1943. This photo here is the great-grandfather of my friend Louise, and this was Rabbi Azuvi, as the Bulgarians are helping him onto the barge that will take him across the Danube to his death. This is a picture of Jewish women from Kehila that are in a cattle car, and there were men, Jewish men from Kehila that had been conscripted for forced labor and were watching their relatives pass by in the cattle car as they went through Bulgaria. This is a picture of the Marcia family, deportations from the former Italian zone of occupation, Janina, March 25th, 1944. Now, this picture was found in the street. When I received it from Dr. Michael Mata, I said to myself, I'm not going to clean it up. I'm not going to Photoshop it. All those creases speak volumes. It was found in the street, probably stepped on countless times, and then a Christian neighbor salvaged it, hoping that someone would return and be able to give the photo back to them. In this picture, there are only 3 people who survived. Nahum Matz, Michael Matz's father, and this little girl married a Ghani and was living in Egypt at the time of the deportations from Janina. The deportations from the former Italian zone of occupation by the Germans took place in March 1944. These deportations in March took place on March 25th, the day of Greek independence, as a way of showing the Greeks how meaningless the concept of independence was. This is a monument of the broken Mogen David, Star of David, in Athens, not too far from the synagogue there. This is the Akos family, and the father of the family perished in the camps, but the rest of the family was saved by a righteous woman who was honored at Yad Vashem. This is from Arthur and Prevesa. These are both members of the Ghanese family. The Jewish communities there were almost completely destroyed. This is from Castoria, again, March 1944. This is the Jewish community of Castoria, and practically everybody in this photo perished. Only 35 Jews survived from Castoria. If you haven't seen the movie Tres Horas, do so. If we ever get back to any sense of normalcy, I have copies for sale in the museum. This is in memory of the Jews of Thessaly, Volos, Lados, and Trikala, Holocaust memorials to them. The Jews of Corfu were not deported until June 1944, and it's a very interesting story because overriding German high command, the Gestapo deported the small Jewish community, rounding them up on the nights of June 9th to 10th, and keeping them in an old fortress where they were sent out on small requisition ships and sent to the mainland, and then wound up in the concentration camp. It was a military base that was used as a concentration camp, Haddad, outside of Athens, before they were put on board trains to take them to Auschwitz-Birkenau. It was such a strenuous journey that it said when the cattle car doors opened up on the Jews of Corfu, the only sound you could hear was silence. I'm very proud to have been involved in the creation of this memorial plaque that is now inside the synagogue in Corfu, listing the surnames of the Jews of Corfu that perished in the Holocaust. The Jews of Crete were not deported until June 1944. Another tragic story because they were rounded up, put on a ship called the Tanis, along with Italian and Greek prisoners of war. The ship was bombed in the Aegean, very close to the island of Santorini, and we did not learn about until after 50 years afterwards that it was the British that actually bombed the ship. Even though it had a prominent red cross on it, they felt it was carrying munitions. We can understand this happens in war. What's painful is that they didn't tell us about this earlier. And this is the synagogue at Chaim in Chania, Crete. These are trinkets that were salvaged, mostly by Christian friends of those that were deported. There was a beautiful exhibit that was put on in the Jewish Museum in Athens. The last deportation to leave what is now Greece was from Rhodes and Kos in July of 1944, and this is a plaque from the synagogue, or what was the synagogue in Kos. It's now a library. This is, if you've been to Rhodes, this is a very famous plaque of the family names of the Jews of Rhodes that perished. This is July 1944. The Germans came to round up the small Jewish community of Rhodes and Kos. They needed every ship, every man, every arm, and yet they took that trip down to these islands to round up the communities. Not only was it important to them to take these Jews, but also to stop off on the island of Leros to pick up one lone Jew there. Now, there was resistance during all of this. In fact, Greece had one of the strongest resistance movements, especially Ia Milas, and this is a picture, and as you can see, there were many women who also fought. This is a very famous photo of Manolis Glezos and Santos here. These were two young men who climbed to the top of the Acropolis to take down the swastika and raise the Greek flag. Manolis Glezos just recently passed away. He became a very prominent politician, very outspoken. I was honored to meet him in 2000. He shook my hand. I thought he was going to break my fingers. He was so powerful. Survivors. Thank God there were survivors. And I have to say here, most of the survivors were not necessarily from the camps, because very few returned from the camps. But most of the survivors owe their survival to Greek Orthodox Christians that risked their life to save them. These pictures happen to be of survivors from the camps. This was taken in Janina, and these women were they were all in the camps, all survived, and they're holding the first babies that were born in Janina. This here is in Athens, also Jewish mothers holding their babies. And this picture was of a man who actually was from our community, Ralph Mosios. and he's being honored for being a survivor. He was an absolutely lovely man, passed away a couple of years ago. Other survivors from the Matza family. This is Michael Matza's family. And they hid in the mountains. His father was a banker in a Grenadian. And his sister Nina works with the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. This here is the Gabrielidis family, the family of Zeno Gabrielidis. His father, Michael, perished. And this is Zeno and his sister Esther here. They survived also with the help of Greek Christians in Athens. This here is the Negrin family from Volos, also members of our community survived. The Batino family, this is Regina and Asa Batino's family. They survived also with the help of Christians in Athens. Here are some of the righteous. This is Heraclius Ionaio, who saved the Akos family. And this was a beautiful story on the island of Berikousa, not too far from Corfu, where the whole island was instrumental in saving the family of a Jewish tailor from Corfu. The monument to the Metropolitan Bishop of Zakynthos and the mayor of Zakynthos for saving all the Jews on the island. With the end of World War II and the establishment of the State of Israel, half the Jewish population made Aliyah to go to Israel. But there were others that tried to go before. And this is a picture of the famous boat, the Exodus. There were other boats. I've been doing extensive research on Jews that have been detained at British military camps on the island of Cyprus and at Blit, which is south of Haifa. The British were preventing Jews from going into Israel, even after the establishment of the State of Israel, because there were Jews being kept, mostly healthy young men, at Cyprus and the camps through 1949. These are Greek Jews celebrating the establishment of the State of Israel. This is in the synagogue in Athens, and this is a gathering in Athens also. There were many Greek Jews that want land in Israel. In fact, the main street in Janina was called Max Nordau Street before it was named after Joseph Aliyah, the famous poet. And Max Nordau was a compatriot of Herzl. We continue to survive. This is our beautiful synagogue, Kehila Kedosha Janina, now in its 93rd year. And I want you to know this is the only time in our entire history that we were forced to close. And this, of course, is something we're so proud of. Moses Eliasov is the first Jewish mayor in Greece. And, you know, always the question of anti-Semitism comes up. And believe me, there's anti-Semitism in Greece, there's anti-Semitism everywhere. We certainly have had our share of it here in the United States. But this picture speaks volumes. In a city of 67,000, there were only 30 Jews, and they elected a Jewish mayor. And when I would speak to people there, I go every year. This is the first year I haven't been there in ages. I've had people approaching me after the election saying, we voted for Moses, we voted for Moses. And one man said it so beautifully, how could I not vote for Moses? When my mother was sick, he treated her without asking a penny. So they voted for the man. They didn't vote what his religion was. Now I'm putting this up here because I feel incumbent to do this. This is our contact information. So, and the sponsors of this, the Sephardic Brotherhood of America, Kehila Kedosha Janina, and the museum. If you want any information, if you want to make a contribution, we would greatly appreciate that. None of us are getting paid for this, by the way. They couldn't afford us, right, Ethan? And so I want to thank you all very much. And Ethan, you want to open the floor to questions?
Yeah, Marcia, thank you. First of all, thank you so much. Beautifully done in this amazing three-part series, as always, with your knowledge is incredible. We'll open up the floor now to questions. We'll ask either you do one of two things, either enter in the chat and message them directly to me, and I'll read them out for everybody to hear and for Marcia to hear. And you can either do that or use the blue hand raise function in participants. You can click on participants, click on your name, and raise the little blue digital hand. We can click on you and unmute you to ask the question as well, which you're welcome to do as well. I have one comment here, a very nice comment. Thank you, Doris. Ethan and Marcia, this was so very informative and a beautiful presentation. Thank you so much for making this possible and accessible to everyone. It was very kind, thank you. I do have a question to Marcia. Now, in the 21st century, we see kind of a new wave of kind of Jewish, what's the word? Jewish presence in Greece, a new kind of knowledge. You know, there's been a dip, but kind of it's growing more and more, especially now. Recently, we saw the bilateral talks between the Prime Minister of Israel and the Prime Minister of Greece. I'm curious what you think that impact has on Greek-Jewish relations in general.
Okay, you know, where it was a long time coming, we happen to have excellent relations with Israel now, when I say we, Greece, and it's also with Cyprus. A lot of this had to do with the fuel in the Eastern Mediterranean working together on a pipeline. But it's also based on commonalities of humanity. And there have been many meetings between Israeli Prime Minister and Greek Prime Minister, not only this one, but the one before, and with Cyprus. I'm very proud to be on the American Jewish Committee Cyprus team, and it's the easiest job in the world, by the way. They love us. And but no, this is really a very positive sign, and I think it's going to only continue to grow more and more. I also want to say, Ethan, as you noticed, because you were in Greece for your Fulbright, the Jewish population, young Jewish population, is very involved, very intelligent, and it's beautiful to watch what goes on, especially between Jews that come. I run a tour for young professionals, Greek Jewish young professionals, which is so much fun. And they hook up with Greek Jews who are in their age bracket. And it's another way of extending those hands across the ocean. And this will only continue to grow more and more. Thank you for that question, Ethan.
Thank you, Marcia. I have a few more questions here. We're only going to take 2 or 3 because we've been mindful of time. So we have one question. How many Jews were left in Greece at the end of World War II?
Okay, out of a pre-World War II population of close to 76,000, there were only 10,000 Jews that survived. Most of them survived in hiding with the help of Greek Orthodox Christians. And like Salonika, that had a population of close to 50,000 before World War II, only had 1,200 Jews that returned to Salonika. Athens became the largest city in Greece. And then with the establishment of the State of Israel, half the Jewish population made Aliyah to settle there. The present population is about 4,500.
We have another question here from our dear friend Elliot Colchimero.
Elliot, I'm an honorary Colchimero, and Elliot is the middle brother.
He asks, why did the British continue to hold Jews in Cyprus even after the establishment of the State of Israel?
Okay, first place, the British were not vested, even though they were part of the Balfour Declaration and they were given the mandate for the establishment of the State of Israel. I don't think they were truly vested in allowing Jews to come in. They wanted to pacify the Arab population, and there's a big question because land was sold. Land was sold in Israel to Jews who wanted to purchase land there. The land that the British were selling was land that was inhabited by Arabs. I don't know who got that money. I really don't know who got that money. But anyway, that's a whole other issue, which I don't think will ever be resolved. But they really had no vested interest in allowing Jews to come in. And the camps in Cyprus were horrendous. Those were the same military camps that had, by the way, Hitler used that as a prototype for when he established the concentration camps, with the exception that there was not extermination in the camps in Cyprus. But the dire conditions, living conditions, were just as bad.
We have another question here. What is the Greek Jewish experience as immigrants to Israel?
Okay. Well, they've been going to Israel way before the establishment of the State of Israel. I mean, on my family, my grandfather went there in 1919 from Salonika. There was a large Saloniclese population that helped build the port of Haifa and the port of Jaffa. There's Zor Moshe, which is a moshav not too far from Netanya. That is a beautiful moshav that was built by Greek Jews. They're certainly in a minority. But I think the Greek Jews in a lot of ways are respected, which hasn't necessarily been the case with other Sephardim that have settled in Israel. But I don't want to get too political here, but I know this is just not like me at all, not to get political, but no, it's okay. They've done well for themselves. My family lives mostly in Haifa, but has also branched out to other parts. There's a beautiful Greek Jewish community in Jerusalem with the still functioning Roman Yod synagogue. And then there's a synagogue in Tel Aviv that was established by Jews from Zakynthos. There are many, many Sephardic synagogues. And they now have cultural centers not too far from Atlit, where the camp, the Taman camp was, south of Haifa. And I've been working with a lovely man from there, Sabi Hanan, doing work to share our knowledge back and forth. Did that answer anybody's question?
Yeah, I think I did. I want to be, since we were going a little over, I want to pause. If you actually do have any additional questions for Marcia, you can feel free to shoot her an email at museum@kkjsm.org as well. So we're gonna cut off now, but I first want to again thank Marcia so much and Kehila Kedosha Janina Synagogue and Museum for partnering with us at the Sephardic Brotherhood on this wonderful 3-part series. Just as Marcia said, these programs through our new digital academy and through KKJ are all voluntary, and these are all programs that we're trying to bring to you at a time where it may be difficult to connect with your communities, and that we're still here connecting with you. And that if you're interested and want to see more of these programs, we ask for your support as always. You can feel free to donate at sephardicbrotherhood.com or at kkjsm.org. We always welcome any support you can give, whether by sponsoring a series or by just giving what you can. We'll always welcome it, as well as volunteering when the time comes, when we, God willing, are able to open up and be safe again. I want to thank you all again. Thank you, Marcia, so much for such a wonderful series again. If you're interested in any more of our series, and maybe even more with Marcia, who knows, hopefully soon, you can check them all out at sephardicbrotherhood.com/Sephardic Digital Academy. And if you have any additional questions or research interests regarding the Jews of Greece, there's a lot of archival material available at Kehila Kedosha Janina's website under archives and documentation and research history, kkjsm.org, very easy to find. Thank you all again so much. Marcia, thank you again so much for everything.
My pleasure, Ethan. Thank you for your hard work. Appreciate it.
Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Okay, thank you.